Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Sophia Richard had always known pain, but the weight of her suffering became heavier the day Florence, her stepmother, ordered her out of the family home. The rain poured heavily that evening, soaking her thin dress as she stood on the doorstep with nothing but a worn-out bag in her hand. She could still hear Florence's cold words ringing in her ears. If you refuse to sell your body like the other girls, then starve in the streets for all I care. Sophia shivered, not just from the chill of the storm, but from the sharp sting of betrayal. Once upon a time, she had believed family meant love and safety. But ever since her father's death, Florence had made her life unbearable. The house that once echoed with her father's laughter now belonged to greed, cruelty, and bitterness. As Sophia walked into the unknown night, the memories of her late father's teachings gave her strength. He had been a herbalist, a gentle soul who believed that healing came not just from leaves and roots, but from kindness and song. Sophia clung to those lessons as she trudged into the city streets with no one to turn to and no roof to hide under. She found temporary shelter in an abandoned wooden shack on the poorer side of the city. It was no bigger than a goat shed, with holes in the roof and a dirt floor, but to Sophia, it became her sanctuary. She lit a small candle and sat on the floor, her stomach growling with hunger. Tears slid down her cheeks as she thought of the meals Florence forced her to cook for others while leaving her scraps to survive on. Yet even in that moment of despair, Sophia whispered a quiet song her father used to hum, a tune that always gave her hope. In darkness, light is born. In sorrow, love is found, she sang, her voice soft but steady. The sound echoed in the empty room, filling the silence with courage. She didn't know how tomorrow would unfold, but one thing was certain. Sophia Richard was not going to give up. She had survived Florence's cruelty, and she would survive the world outside, too. Across the city, in a luxurious mansion surrounded by marble floors, golden chandeliers, and armed security, lived Joshua Tyler, the only son of Pascal Tyler, the famous billionaire. Joshua had everything money could buy: expensive cars, tailored suits, and an engagement to Anita, a woman everyone believed was perfect for him. But beneath the glamorous surface, Joshua was deeply unhappy. His father's empire had attracted friends who weren't true and women who loved his wealth more than his soul. His heart craved honesty, someone who would see him not as Pascal Tyler's son, but as Joshua the man. He often wandered into quiet corners of the mansion, looking out the window at the night sky, wondering what it felt like to live a simple, genuine life. Unbeknownst to Joshua, Anita's love was a lie. She had long grown tired of him, her heart burning with desire for his best friend, Frank. Together, they whispered secrets and plotted betrayals in the shadows of his trust. Frank, jealous of Joshua's wealth and inheritance, convinced Anita that the only way they could be together freely was to remove Joshua from the picture entirely. Their plan was cruel but carefully laid out. Poison Joshua, dump him far from home, and let the world think fate had claimed him. As Joshua enjoyed what he thought was a loving dinner with Anita, she smiled sweetly while sliding poison into his drink. He raised a glass with unsuspecting trust, not knowing that his life was about to take a dark turn, one that would cross paths with a poor orphan girl whose song could heal the broken pieces of the soul. Joshua had always been cautious, but love made him blind. Anita's laughter, her soft touch on his arm, and her convincing lies made it impossible for him to suspect her. As he lifted the glass, he thought about the future, about a family, about making his own path outside his father's shadow. But the moment the bitter liquid slid down his throat, his body stiffened. Pain stabbed his stomach, and sweat broke across his forehead. He clutched the table, gasping for breath, as Anita leaned closer, pretending to be concerned. "Joshua, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake alarm. Frank, who had been waiting nearby, rushed in with mask of worry, but in his eyes was a flicker of satisfaction. Joshua tried to speak, but his tongue felt heavy, his words slurred. The world spun around him like a whirlwind. Anita and Frank dragged him out, whispering about how everything would finally be theirs once he was gone. They carried him into Frank's car and drove through the city streets, searching for a quiet, deserted spot. When they reached an abandoned road near the city outskirts, They pulled his unconscious body out and left him on the cold pavement. "Goodbye, Joshua," Anita whispered with a cruel smile before the car disappeared into the night. There he lay, helpless and fading, unaware that fate was about to send him an angel in the form of a poor orphan girl who would change his destiny forever. Sophia's stomach growled as she wandered the dark streets in search of leftovers. The city was cruel to the poor. Trash cans were locked, restaurant owners chased her away, and people avoided her as though poverty was contagious. Her feet ached from walking barefoot on rough ground, but she pressed on, humming softly to keep her spirit alive. Her late father's words echoed in her mind. "Sing when you are weak, child. Songs carry power." Just as she turned a corner, her eyes caught the sight of a figure lying on the ground. At first, she thought it was a drunk man, abandoned after a night of excess. But as she drew closer, her heart thudded painfully. The man's clothes were expensive, his face pale, his breathing shallow. Blood trickled from his mouth, and his skin burned with fever. Sophia dropped to her knees beside him, panic coursing through her veins. "Sir, can you hear me?" she whispered, shaking him gently. He groaned but couldn't open his eyes. Something inside Sophia told her she couldn't just walk away. Though she had little, she still had her father's herbs and knowledge. Without hesitation, she lifted his weak body with surprising strength, determined to save a stranger who life had thrown in her path. Back in her tiny shack, Sophia laid Joshua carefully on the dirt floor. She rushed to gather the few herbs she had saved from her father's old pouch, dried leaves that could neutralize poison, ginger roots for strength, and bitter bark for fever. Crushing them together, she boiled a small concoction over a tin stove, the smoky air filling the room. With steady hands, she spoon-fed him the bitter liquid, praying silently that it would work. His body shook violently, sweat pouring from his forehead, but Sophia refused to give up. She mopped his skin with a rag dipped in cool water, whispering encouragement as though he could hear her. When the night grew darker and fear clawed at her, Sophia remembered her father's last lesson: sing to the sick. He believed songs had healing energy, that the soul responded to rhythm even when the body failed. So, Sophia began to sing. Her voice, soft but powerful, carried through the room like a bomb. The melody was filled with hope, with strength, with love. She sang until her throat ached, and slowly, Joshua's breathing calmed. His body stopped convulsing, and though still unconscious, he looked less tormented. Sophia touched his hand gently, her heart swelling with compassion for the stranger whose life now rested in her hands. The morning sun filtered through the cracks of the shack's roof, casting golden streaks across Joshua's face. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open. Confusion clouded his gaze as he scanned the unfamiliar surroundings. His throat burned, his limbs felt weak, and memories of the dinner with Anita struck him like lightning. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. Then he saw her, Sophia, curled up on the floor, fast asleep, her hair spilling over her face, her small frame shivering under a thin blanket. Joshua's heart softened at the sight of her. She looked nothing like the women he knew. No fancy clothes, no heavy makeup. Just a simple girl who seemed to radiate kindness even in her sleep. He wondered why she had helped him instead of leaving him to die like most strangers would. As he shifted, Sophia stirred awake. Her eyes widened when she saw him conscious. "You're awake," she whispered with relief, rushing to support him. Joshua nodded weakly, but suspicion lingered in his mind. He didn't know what would save him or why, and after the betrayal he had just experienced, trust did not come easily. Still, deep inside, he knew this girl had given him life when death was already at his door. As Sophia helped Joshua drink some water, he avoided giving away his true identity. He knew Anita and Frank had betrayed him, and if they could, others might too. "What's your name?" Sophia asked gently. Joshua hesitated before answering. "Just call me Jay." It was safer to hide his real name until he knew who he could trust. Sophia didn't push further. She was just glad he was alive. She told him how she had found him on the road and brought him here to treat him with the herbs her father had left behind. Joshua listened quietly, his chest tightening with guilt. He had grown up surrounded by wealth, yet had never known the kind of kindness this poor girl had shown him without expecting anything in return. The shack was falling apart, the floor rough, and yet Sophia carried herself with dignity and grace. He wanted to thank her, but the words caught in his throat. For now, he decided to stay silent about his background. If she knew he was Pascal Tyler's son, she might look at him differently. What he wanted was to see her true heart, and for the first time in years, Joshua felt strangely safe. Days passed, and Sophia continued to care for Joshua while juggling her own struggles. She scavenged for food, often skipping meals to make sure he ate. She worked tirelessly to fetch water and prepare his herbal remedies, all while humming songs to keep both their spirits alive. Joshua observed her closely, seeing the strength she carried despite her poverty. One evening, as they sat together, Sophia opened up about her past, how her stepmother had driven her out, how she lived with nothing but memories of her father's love. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, smiling faintly. "I may be poor, but I still have hope," she said. Joshua was moved deeply. He couldn't understand how someone with so little could still be so full of light in his world of wealth. People with everything often lived in misery, while this orphan with nothing found reasons to smile. For the first time, he felt ashamed of his privileged life. He longed to tell her who he truly was, to promise her that her days of suffering would soon end, but fear held him back. He didn't want to see him as a billionaire's son. He wanted her to see him simply as Jay, a man whose broken heart needed healing. As weeks passed, the bond between Sophia and Joshua deepened. Though still weak, Joshua began to help her with small chores, fetching wood, tidying the shack, and keeping her company. They laughed together, shared stories, and found comfort in each other's presence. Sophia noticed how thoughtful and intelligent he was, far different from the men in her community, who only thought of survival and selfish desires. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a spark of happiness returning. Joshua, too, found himself changing. Sophia's humility and courage inspired him. At night, when she sang her healing songs, he often closed his eyes not just to rest but to listen, letting her voice mend the wounds Anita and Frank's betrayal had left in his soul. He began to admire her strength, her kindness, and her purity. Something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Something he hadn't felt even with Anita, a genuine affection that wasn't clouded by doubt. Still, he reminded himself to be cautious, until he brought Anita and Frank to justice. Revealing his true identity to Sophia could put her in danger. One evening, as Joshua sat outside with Sophia under the starry sky, she asked him gently, "Jay, what happened to you before I found you?" Joshua froze. Memories of the poison, Anita's laughter, and Frank's betrayal clawed at him. He wanted to tell her everything, to unburden his soul, but instead he forced a smile and replied, "I made some wrong choices, trusted the wrong people." Sophia didn't press further, sensing the pain in his voice. Instead, she reached for his hand and whispered, "You don't have to tell me now. When you're ready, I'll listen." Her words touched Joshua deeply. In her presence, he didn't feel like a billionaire's son or a man burdened by betrayal. He felt human, vulnerable, and understood. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the night breeze wrapping around them like a protective cloak. In that instant, Joshua realized Sophia had become more than just his savior. She was his anchor, his comfort, and perhaps the love he never knew he needed. But he also knew that the peace they shared was fragile, for the world outside was waiting, and sooner or later, his past would come knocking at their door. Anita and Frank celebrated their false victory in secret. They believed Joshua was long gone, his wealth and inheritance now within reach. Anita walked around Joshua's mansion, wearing his ring, as though she had earned it, while Frank slipped into Joshua's office, already imagining himself as the rightful heir of the Tyler empire. They laughed together, blind to the truth, that Joshua was still alive, healing slowly in the care of a girl they had never imagined could stand in their way. Their ambition, however, made them restless. Rumors began to circulate that Joshua had been spotted in the poorer parts of the city. Though they dismissed the whispers at first, doubt gnawed at Anita's mind. What if he wasn't dead? What if he returned for revenge? Meanwhile, Joshua's nights were filled with dreams of Anita's betrayal. He would wake drenched in sweat, Sophia's soft voice calming him back to sleep. Every dream reminded him of the bitterness of love gone wrong, but also the beauty of kindness found in unexpected places. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. One day, he would have to face Anita and Frank, not only for his sake, but to protect his father's empire. Still, the thought of leaving Sophia unsettled him. She had become his refuge, and the idea of losing her weighed heavily on his heart. The battle between vengeance and love brewed silently within him. Sophia noticed Joshua's distant gazes and the pain hidden in his eyes. One evening, she confronted him gently. "Jay, you don't have to carry your burdens alone. If someone hurt you, they don't deserve your silence." Her voice was firm yet kind, and Joshua felt a flicker of courage ignite within him. Though he didn't reveal the full truth, he confessed enough for her to understand. Someone close to him had betrayed him, poisoned him, and left him for dead. Sophia's eyes widened with shock, but instead of pity, she offered strength. "Then you must heal, not just your body, but your soul. And when you're strong enough, face them. Don't let their cruelty define you." Her words pierced through Joshua's guarded walls. He had grown used to people seeking his wealth, but Sophia's sincerity was different. She wasn't asking for anything, only urging him to live, to fight, and to reclaim his dignity. For the first time since the betrayal, Joshua felt a deep sense of trust forming. That night, when Sophia sang her familiar melody, Joshua closed his eyes and allowed her voice to carry him away from the shadows of his past. He wasn't ready to tell her who he truly was, but he silently promised that one day she would know everything. Joshua's health improved steadily under Sophia's care. He regained strength, his once weak steps now firmer, his once pale face glowing with life again. Sophia marveled at the transformation, though she continued to treat him with the same devotion. Together, they created a routine, fetching water, preparing simple meals, and sharing stories by the fire. These small moments stitched their souls together like threads of fate. Joshua admired Sophia's resilience. Despite her harsh life, she carried hope like a lantern, lighting the path for them both. But deep within, Joshua's desire for justice grew stronger. He couldn't erase the image of Anita's cold smile or Frank's treacherous eyes. He trained his body silently, exercising when Sophia was asleep, preparing himself for the day he would return. He wasn't just a man betrayed. He was a son, a lover scorned, and a survivor who had been reborn. Sophia noticed his growing strength and determination, but said nothing. Instead, she supported him quietly, understanding that he needed to face whatever demons haunted him. Though she feared the day he would leave, she chose to treasure every moment they still shared. Back at the Tyler mansion, Pascal Tyler grew worried about his missing son. Anita fed him lies, claiming Joshua had traveled suddenly for business and would be unreachable for weeks. But Pascal knew his son better than anyone. Joshua would never leave without telling him. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. He began questioning Anita, whose rehearsed answers started to falter under pressure. Frank tried to smooth things over, but his arrogance gave him away. The billionaire quietly launched an investigation, determined to uncover the truth about his son's disappearance. Anita and Frank, however, were growing restless. Their once thrilling secret turned into paranoia. Every shadow felt like Joshua watching, every knock on the door like his return. Anita's nights were restless, plagued by nightmares of him gasping for breath. Her guilt clashed with her greed, leaving her tormented. Frank, on the other hand, grew bolder, dreaming of marrying Anita openly and claiming a piece of the Tyler fortune. The cracks in their alliance began to show, but their lust for wealth kept them chained together. They didn't realize that time was running out, and justice was closer than they thought. One quiet evening, Joshua and Sophia sat by a small fire. The stars shimmered brightly above, and the night was filled with the sound of distant crickets. Joshua turned to Sophia, his heart heavy with emotions he could no longer contain. "Sophia," he said softly, "I don't know what I would become if I hadn't met you. You saved me, not just my body, but my spirit. You are the light I didn't know I needed." His voice trembled with sincerity. Sophia looked at him, her eyes moist, unsure what to say. No one had ever spoken to her with such tenderness. Sophia's heart raced as she whispered, "And you gave me back hope. For years, I thought love and kindness died with my father. But since you came into my life, I feel alive again." Their eyes met, and for the first time, they didn't look away. The silence between them was filled with unspoken promises. Joshua longed to tell the truth about who he was, but fear held him back. For now, he was just Jay, the man who found love in the most unexpected place, in the arms of an orphan girl who had nothing but gave him everything. The day came when Joshua could no longer hide his true identity. A group of Pascal's men, sent to investigate his disappearance, finally tracked him down near the poor outskirts of the city. They approached the shack, bowing respectfully to him. Sophia's eyes widened in shock as she watched them address him as Mr. Tyler. She turned to Joshua, confusion and hurt clouding her gaze. "You're Pascal Tyler's son?" she asked, her voice trembling. Joshua swallowed hard, knowing this moment would change everything. "Yes, Sophia. I'm Joshua Tyler," he admitted, his eyes pleading for her to understand. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid. I wanted you to see me as a man, not a billionaire's son. I wanted your love to be for me, not for what I have." Sophia's heart ached. Part of her felt betrayed that he had hidden the truth, but another part understood his fear. She had seen his wounds, his humanity, long before she knew his wealth. After a long silence, she whispered, "You should have trusted me, but I still believe you are more than your name." Relief washed over Joshua. She didn't reject him. Instead, her acceptance strengthened his resolve to fight for their future together. Joshua returned to his father's mansion with Sophia by his side. The grand halls and polished floors felt foreign after the simplicity of the shack, but Sophia walked with quiet dignity. Pascal Tyler wept openly upon seeing his son alive, embracing him with trembling arms. Joshua recounted everything, the poison, the betrayal, and how Sophia saved him. Pascal's heart swelled with gratitude for the orphan girl, who had given him back his only child. He welcomed her warmly, declaring she would always have a place in their home. Meanwhile, Anita's world began to crumble. She was summoned to the mansion, unaware Joshua was alive. She walked in confidently, her lies ready, only to freeze when she saw him standing before her, her face drained of color, her mouth opening in shock. Frank, too, was dragged in by security, his arrogance replaced by fear. Joshua looked at them both with eyes cold as steel. "You tried to kill me," he said calmly, his voice laced with authority. "But you failed, and now you will face justice." Anita fell to her knees, begging for forgiveness, her crocodile tears flowing like a river. "Joshua, I loved you once. Please don't do this," she pleaded, but her words only deepened his disgust. Frank, however, remained defiant, spitting bitter words. "You don't deserve what you have. It should have been mine." His envy boiled over, but Joshua stood tall, unmoved. He signaled his father's guards, who dragged him away to face the law. The media exploded with the scandal. Headlines screamed betrayal, poison, and greed. Anita and Frank became the talk of the nation, their names forever stained with infamy. For Joshua, however, justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about closure. He had trusted the wrong people, but he had also found the right one. Standing beside Sophia, he felt a new chapter of his life opening, one not built on wealth or false love, but on truth, resilience, and the simple beauty of loyalty. Sophia squeezed his hand gently, her eyes telling him what words could not, that she would walk with him no matter what storms lay ahead. Weeks after the storm had passed, Joshua knew it was time to take the next step. He led Sophia to the very place where they had first sat under the stars together. The air was quiet, filled with memories of healing songs and whisper hopes. Sophia, dressed simply as always, smiled at him, unaware of what he planned. Joshua knelt before her, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, elegant but not ostentatious, chosen carefully to reflect her humility and grace. "Sophia Richard," Joshua began, his voice trembling with emotion, "you saved my life when the world tried to take it away. You showed me love when I thought it no longer existed. You are my strength, my light, my heart. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as her hand shook. For a girl who had lost everything, who had slept in a shack and been rejected by the world, This moment felt like a miracle. With her voice breaking, she whispered, "Yes, Joshua, 1,000 times yes." The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as though blessing their union. Their wedding was unlike anything the city had ever seen. It wasn't the wealth that dazzled people, but the story, the orphan girl who saved a billionaire's son, the love that bloomed in the ashes of betrayal. Guests wept as Sophia walked down the aisle, her beauty radiant not because of her dress, but because of her spirit. Joshua stood waiting, his heart swelling with pride and love. When they exchanged vows, their words were more than promises. They were testimonies of survival, healing, and second chances. As husband and wife, Joshua and Sophia began a new journey together. She was no longer the poor orphan shunned by her stepmother. She was a beloved wife of a man who saw her worth beyond riches. And he was no longer the lonely son of a billionaire, betrayed by false love. He was a man reborn by the compassion of a woman who had nothing yet gave him everything. Their story became a legend whispered across the city, a reminder that true love isn't found in wealth or status, but in hearts willing to heal each other. Together, Joshua and Sophia embraced their future, hand in hand, ready to face whatever life would bring. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.